Hello, everyone, and welcome to an Extivia webinar, Growing Beyond the Plateau, 5 Critical Mistakes Every CEO Must Avoid, presented by Lisa Anderson. My name is Alex Killian, and I'm the video producer on Extivia's marketing team. Before we dive into our webinar this morning, I would love to tell you just a little bit about our company. Since 1992, Extivia has established a proven reputation as a company that delivers leading-edge IT solutions and technology support for our clients' specific requirements. Our service areas include mobile app development, CRM, cloud, database, data governance and strategy, APIs, managed services, software licensing, digital experience, and focused solutions for government contractors using Microsoft Dynamics Business Central. And today we'll be hearing from Lisa Anderson. Lisa is founder and CEO of Anavo Transformation Solutions LLC, which helps CEOs achieve their full potential and build profitable, bankable, scalable, sustainable, and ultimately sellable businesses. The home of the Pulse Profit Method for today's CEO, Lisa and her team of strategic business advisors help organizations plan their vision, understand key impact indicators, leverage resources, scan opportunities and threats, and execute their plan. For close to 30 years, Lisa has helped hundreds of businesses grow while maintaining a healthy and profitable bottom line. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Go ahead and take it away.
Alex, thank you for having me. I appreciate you. So just to share a little bit more about who I am and how we serve the small business and the government contracting community. As Alex mentioned, I am a strategic business advisor, and I'm also a virtual CFO. We provide a number of solutions centered around government contracting compliance, government contracting capture, as well as DCA audit readiness. I've been in the industry, serving businesses in the government contracting industry for over 30 years, and I've been a small business owner myself for 23 years. So I'm really excited to be sharing this morning. As I mentioned, I'm a public CPA, a certified public accountant, a certified leadership coach, and a certified government contracts expert. And all those things gives me an opportunity to really provide a real good holistic approach to helping companies develop their strategic plans for scalability, sustainability, and then ultimately achieving their legacy objectives. And so what we like to say is we help companies grow from the inside out by providing those strategic solutions that will help companies get beyond the plateau and stay in that growth position. Just to tell you a little bit more about the concepts of what we use and how we help companies grow. We developed what we call the Pulse Profit Method. And the Pulse Profit Method essentially is the holistic approach that we take to helping companies evaluate what's going on inside and outside of the business, and also to help them identify the gaps that may be existing inside or outside of the business. And then how do we revisit those areas to stay on target with our strategic goals and objectives. And then again, to make certain that we're achieving our legacy objectives. Many companies that we work with, for example, have entered into the 8A program. They participate in the 8A program with the Small Business Administration. And as we know, that's a 9-year program. It has a defined end date. And the objective is to help small businesses in particular to scale the business, to have good opportunities to compete in a marketplace that is filled with lots of competition, both large and small. But they only have 9 years to ramp up business, to take advantage of business opportunities, contract opportunities that are set aside for just 8A contracts, but they have to take that 9 years and prepare to graduate. And a lot of companies don't graduate, or successfully, I should say. They have a short-term lifespan once they've graduated from the program. Our objective is to take our approach and help them continue to establish that long-term sustainability by helping them put those strategic plans in place. As I mentioned, I've been in business for 30 years. I'm sorry, I've been in the industry for 30 years, but I've been in business for 23. And my overall vision is to help 1 million achieve millions. That's my objective. And then also what we want to do is we want to help individuals, business owners in particular, to advance through the different phases of business, but to advance from consultancy all the way up through chairman of the board, where they are sitting at the helm and managing or overseeing the operations to ensure that the company is continuing to live out its legacy. And so our pause profit method is one of a kind. It's unique. We help companies focus on the 4 key areas of mission, marketing, money, and management. And we like to say we operate in that order, and then we come back and we repeat the cycle. Because effective business growing from the inside out means that we have to continuously go back and revisit. And what that does is it helps us to identify the gaps that may exist, and it helps us to quickly fill those gaps and continue to build upon a solid and sustainable foundation. And so what we like to say as it relates to our business model or the model that we follow is that your legacy matters. Every decision that you make should be a legacy decision. Every action that you take in business should be about the long game and not necessarily the short game. And so that's what filling in the gaps is all about. So today we're going to talk about growing beyond the plateau, and I'm going to share 5 mistakes that we've seen CEOs make throughout the course of business. And the things that they want to avoid as they go through that process. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book. It's called Beyond the Plateau, 5 Simple Steps to Scale Their Way to $1 million business. And a lot of what we do is we help companies, again, get beyond the plateau. The plateau is that place that we kind of tend to stand stagnant a little bit. There's little to no growth. And so what we know about the plateau is this: it is an undeniable truth and expectation that all businesses will hit a plateau at some point in time in their life cycle. In fact, businesses can expect to hit multiple plateaus throughout their lifespan. And that is the honest truth. It doesn't happen once and then you figure it out and you get over it. You actually will hit multiple plateaus throughout your life cycle. The question isn't, will I hit a plateau? The question is, what should I do when I hit the plateau, and to make certain that the business is continuing to move forward in achieving its objectives. So what is a plateau? And this is what we take a look at when it relates to companies who have plateaus. So a plateau is a space between growth and more growth, or it is a space between no growth and death. And so what we don't want to do is we don't want businesses to die a slow death by doing nothing, or to take a long period of time to pivot when they get on or step onto a plateau. Instead, we want them to take action so that they can continue to move forward, to continue to increase top line earnings, to increase bottom line earnings, to increase their customer base. And so getting beyond the plateau is just number 1, recognizing that we're on the plateau. And then number 2, what do we need to do to direct and create further success from the plateau in that particular position? So right now, we have hit a major plateau with this pandemic that we're all experiencing right now worldwide. I mean, this is a plateau that we could not have expected. It's not one that we planned for in our 2020 vision, but nonetheless, it is here, and it has held some businesses back. And quite frankly, it's actually created some significant opportunities for others. And so in this current positioning that we're in, there's a lot of pandemonium. We've heard the word or the term throughout the course of these last, 2 months, 3 months, that we're living in uncertain times, that we're experiencing a lot of uncertainty. We've seen businesses shut down, not just in other industries like the hospitality industry or the entertainment industry or the restaurant industry, but we have started to see some businesses that are in the government contracting industry have some major impact as well. And so as a result of that, everyone is in a panic. And what I like to say is don't panic, don't panic. Instead, let's plan. Let's put our plans in motion. Let's pivot. Let's make some really solid moves and shifts that will help us to get back on track. Even during this uncertain time, we're experiencing something that we've never experienced for, at least in my history of being in business or being in the industry. And that is where the government has been hugely impacted. We've seen industries within the government contracting sector that have had some impact as well. For example, if you happen to be a company or a business that operates in the intelligence community, typically throughout history of economic downturns or crisis situation, the intelligence industry continues to operate at full capacity. However, with this pandemic, this is the first time I've experienced that they've had to draw back some. And so we are experiencing some things that we've never experienced before. And I will say, thank goodness that there has been some activity to help spark and continue economic stimulus for businesses that are operating globally here in the United States, and then also within the government contracting community. So my first polling question is here on the screen. And I think you will get a question to answer the poll, or a tool to answer the poll pop up on your screen. But the polling question is, how long have you been in business? How long have you been in business? All right, so growing through the plateau and avoiding, the major mistakes that we've seen CEOs make, requires that we understand that there are different types of disrupting instances that will occur in business, especially as it relates to government contracting. The first disruption, and I think we experience this certainly every 4 years and sometimes every 8 years, but that's when we have a change in command. Every time we have a change in command, there is some type of impact that happens in the business or in the business community within the government contracting space. We have to try to figure out what is the objective, what are the initiatives, where's the money going to go as it relates to the new initiatives under the new helm. And so sometimes we take a dip as a result of the changes in command, but the objective is not to stay in the dip position, but instead to be predictive in how we can make certain moves so that we're continuing to climb. The second type of instance that will be a disruptor in your business is some form of crises. And crises can occur internally or externally, just like what we're experiencing right now with the pandemic. And just like with the change in hands, we want to make certain that certainly there's going to be some impact, but we just want it to be, a quick shock maybe. But then we would really want to pivot and get into back into gear to scaling our opportunities. And so what I like to say as it relates to the plateau is, you stay in business long enough, you're going to experience crises. You're going to experience them. This is the timeline of me and my business. I started business in 1997. As I said, it's been 23 years. And over the course of 23 years, I've experienced seven different crises, external crises, I should say, to include this pandemic that we're experiencing right now. And what you see as circles on this timeline are years in which we've made a pivot. We made it major pivots that continue to allow us to climb the ladder towards scalability and leading us to ultimately to solidifying, strengthening, and increasing the legacy that we're building within the business. And so that's what we want to be able to do, is to continuously be on that pathway to pivot when necessary, identify what's happening in the marketplace, identify what's happening inside the business, and make those profitable pivots. And so here's our second polling question. And our second polling question is this: how has COVID-19 affected your business? How has COVID-19 affected your business? And I'll give you an opportunity to respond to that question as well. because that's something that's very important to know. How has it impacted your business? So this is a poll that was done by the National Federation of Independent Businesses that they took around March 15th. And they asked companies, what was the impact, small businesses in particular, what was the impact that COVID had on their business at that time? And the answer at that time was only 74%, 74% said there was no impact, right? That was around March 15th. And then when you take a look at the degrees of concern that they had, it was kind of spread across the gamut. Some were somewhat concerned, some were not concerned at all, some were slightly concerned, and then there was about 16% that were very concerned, right? And so as we continue to move along in the pandemic, those statistics have changed. And so these are statistics that were taken but through a survey or reported through a survey by Goldman Sachs. And these statistics were reported around April 22nd. And this was right after the Paycheck Protection Program came into place. And, you know, there certainly was a lot of panic. We'd been in the stay in place orders for about a month at that point in time. And so they did a survey, and now we've switched from being just 74% impacted to saying that 19% have been temporarily closed, 39% was fully open. So it's shifted from 74% not being impacted at all to 39% being impacted or not being impacted. That's a huge shift. Okay. And so again, the objective is to identify what types of things occurred within our business that put us in a position where there's a lot of pandemonium, a lot of panic, and a lot of shift or impact in the business. And then so how do we avoid that? So when we take a look at what SBA says when there's an economic crisis or some type of situation that impacts the business community, there are certain things that businesses become concerned with. One is access to capital. The next is workforce capacity. The next area of concern is facility remediation. Insurance coverage is a concern. The immediate and drastic shifts in demand. Those are things that companies are concerned with. Marketing and capturing interest and commitment. And then having an unclear or inadequate plan. Those are all the concerns that the SBA reports as common concerns that small businesses have as it relates to impact of crisis. And so this is what SBA further reported as it related to the Paycheck Protection Program. When we look here in the section that says loan size, we can see that there were 1.2 million loans approved for businesses at the rate of $150,000 or under. That's a big amount of impact in the small business community. And then when we look at the states and territories that were impacted, it spread far and wide. But, you know, I like to say that at the end of the day, what we want to be able to do is understand what types of things are causing companies to retreat, companies to be impacted by crisis or disruptions in the marketplace. And then what can they do? What can they do throughout the course of their business life cycle to solidify those areas so that the impact is not as great? We want to be part of the 39%. That once the tip of a pandemic or a crisis or disruption occurs, that we are a part of the 39%. The 39% that said there has been no impact at all. Okay. So what we know is that there are three key reasons or key causes for businesses to be impacted, to essentially place themselves in a position where they could either be shut down or will take them years to recover. And so my next poll, well, there was another polling question, but I won't talk about that one. So what are the three key areas that we take a look at that cause these breakdowns? The first one is a breakdown in leadership decisions, What we know and believe about business is that everything that occurs in business, every shift that the business may take, every impact, every plateau that a business may find themselves on, it is directly related to the decisions and that's being made by leadership. So that's the first breakdown. The second breakdown is the inability to operate profitable business models with proven revenue streams. So when we take a look at some small businesses, doing things like cutting costs and prices just to get our foot in the door, or inadequately pricing our projects, or building a bench of people who are not billable for sake of making certain that we have resources that are available when a contract opportunity opens up. These are all things that have an impact on the bottom line and typically are causes for immediate reactions to or impact to disruptive situations. And then the last one is they run out of cash. They simply run out of cash. And so that's a huge one that we just saw in this marketplace right now. So the polling question that I have for you right now is, what is at the root of each of these failures? What is at the root? What do you believe is at the root of each one of these failures? And I'll give you a second to answer that poll. So what is at the root of each of these failures? And what we have found in our experience is the single most common thing that is at the root of these failures is poor planning. Poor planning. And so what we want to be able to do is stop the insanity. Let's put you in a strong position, in a position where, like I said, when there's a disruption, it's just a quick disruption that we're able to quickly pivot. We're able to quickly kick it back into gear, and we're continuing to scale the business. So what we want to make certain is that moving forward, that you decide that, when there's a disruption in the marketplace, that you won't be a victim, because that's what we see a lot. A lot of businesses in these types of situations feel that they've been victimized. You're in a place where quitting is not an option, especially in the small business arena. That you hunker down and that you begin to manage the controllables. That we want you to be in a position where you're counting the costs and building business by design. That's what having a good plan is all about. And then again, as I said, opening up this session is making certain that every action that you take, every decision that you're making is all about the long game. Why are we in this thing? Because at the end of the day, we want to make certain that what we are experiencing right now, if your company has been one that has been impacted, that you are in a position right now where you are convicting to, this will never happen to us again. And that's what strong strategic planning is all about. So the 5 mistakes that CEOs must avoid, these are the 5 that we have seen and that we're seeing right now that are shaken out as very clear and evident gaps that existed in business long before this pandemic occurred. And the first one is failing to prepare an adequate exit strategy. This is the long game. This is all about that strategic plan. It's not about the tactics that you put in place year to year to year. It is what is it that we're guiding towards? Are we positioning the business to be a strong, healthy organization so that one day we are prepared and positioned to sell? And that we need to be in a position where we have that as an exit strategy, that it is clearly defined, and that we are ready, we are guiding our ship toward achieving that objective. The next mistake is failing to incorporate and managing against predictable financial incomes. So we work with companies that scale from startup to $30 million in annual revenues. And when we look at that scale, there's a common thread that in a lot of cases, companies are not keeping their finger on the pulse of the financial trends. And that is critical because numbers tell a story and they never lie. And they tell you about the direction that you're heading in. And they also tell you about some of the things that you need to do in order to mitigate risk and also to remain on the pathway to scaling. The next one is failing to tap into broad networks. And this is a big one. This is all about pipelining and tapping into resources and connections and relationships that we have. A lot of our marketing activity tends to be more centered around attracting individuals to us, raising the flag and doing what I like to say, force feeding individuals. But instead, force feeding them about our capabilities. But instead, we want to flip the script. We want to make certain that we're doing much more outreach, especially when we are approaching a disruptive situation. And then when we're in a disrupted situation, we want to make certain that we are doing a lot more outreach instead of, a lot of the prescriptive tactics associated with marketing. And once you do those things, you want to make certain that those things stay in place. The next one is playing small. And so what that relates to is diversifying your customer portfolio. So I mentioned earlier that the intelligence community is one of the areas that was impacted, and nobody would have ever expected that intelligence community would have been impacted the way that it has. And that has created some disruption for businesses that serve that community. And it's going to be long reaching. The impact is right now, in some cases, contractors are still able to work on some schedule, and there is a plan to, in some cases, to provide some type of stimulus through contract dollars to allow contractors to recover some of those dollars. However, the other impact is all around gaining resources, hiring resources that can do the work once everything starts to open up again. So it's going to be a grander impact than what we're currently experiencing. For those companies who operate in that industry, had they diversified their portfolio, and instead of being solely or primarily in supporting the IC community, and started to look outside of that community and start to deliver their core competencies in other areas, to include some commercial functions and activities, that creates greater sustainability. And then the final mistake is failing to leverage profitable teams and systems. What I see as a failure there, as a key failure there, is the key thing is, number one, making certain that an A team is incorporated into supporting the business. An A team would be a circle of advisors that the company can turn to, that can support and help to guide and protect the business as it continues to move forward. Certainly we have our CPAs on board and we have our bankers on board, but one thing we did find is that our banking relationships may not have been as strong as they needed to be as we were guiding through this pandemic. And so we want to make certain that those mistakes are avoided. So continuing to manage against the consequences will leave you always with consequences. We don't want you to always be in a reactive mode. We want you to be in a proactive mode. We always talk about, how do we be proactive? Well, being proactive means that we're constantly evaluating against the strategic plan, constantly evaluating the 4 key areas of business, constantly checking our pulse on the decisions that we're making, and being able to continue to move forward with those strategies that we have in place for the long game. So here's the polling question. Do you have a strategic plan? Do you have a strategic plan? So this is what a strategic plan looks like. And this strategic plan is a strategic plan at a glance. And this is something that we work with our clients on. It's something that they keep in front of them on a regular basis. We revisit this on a quarterly basis, and it gives us the opportunity to evaluate the business and evaluate the gaps. And then further beyond this, we utilize this one-page strategic plan at a glance. And we also marry that with the financial analysis, the key trends, the key performance indicators of the business, so that we can always know what position the business is in, again, where we need to pivot, and the things that we need to do to make certain that we're continuing to prosper and thrive as a business, that we're continuing to move beyond the plateau and capturing new opportunity. So as you can see, this is all about the long game. So we do have some opportunities to document some of our core objectives for this current year, for a 1 year period. But really, at the end of the day, it's all about the long game. And so you want to make certain that you keep those things in front of you, that you don't let those drop. And then when we take a look at the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, that's where we are able to really start to evaluate whether or not we have the capacity to continue to move along the pathway to achieving continuous success and sustainability and growth of the business. And if not, what do we need to do? What do we need to put in place to make certain that we are achieving those objectives? And so again, this is the plan that will help you at a snapshot make certain that you and your teams, this is a plan that can be communicated to everyone. So you and your teams are clearly aware of what your objectives are, what you're moving towards, and then give you the capability to be able at any point in time evaluate and check your pulse. So polling question for you. How often do you revisit your strategic plan? How often do you revisit your strategic plan? When I work with businesses and we ask them that question, generally they'll say they have a plan. It's a plan that they put in place when they either needed to get certified for something, they needed to address financial capacity. They needed to make certain that they updated for, in our case, many of our clients are 8A for the 8A program. But when we ask them how frequently do they revisit it, not often enough. Not often. Usually it's when there's a major situation in business that causes them to go back and say, okay, let's take a look at this. So let me ask you this question. Next polling question. Has your strategic plan helped you manage through this pandemic? Has your plan helped you manage through this pandemic? And I'll give you a second to answer that question. So the key components to a successful strategic plan are this, and it goes back to the holistic approach of evaluating the business, doing that on a frequent basis. Okay. So number one, you want to make certain that you as a CEO, that you're focusing on the appropriate areas of business, that all of the other areas that are vying for your attention and for your time may need to either be delegated, or if not important, they need to be ditched. But at the end of the day, there are 4 key areas you should be focusing in on. And that's your mission, your marketing, your money, and your management. And you want to make certain that you're revisiting those areas on a quarterly basis. Don't just put your plan in place and park it on a shelf. You need to revisit that on a quarterly basis. You want to make certain that your plan addresses your why. Why are you in business? What's your long game? What's your exit strategy? What is it that you're looking to achieve as a business at the end of the day? That needs to be in front of you. You need to make certain that it considers your competitive advantage. What is it that makes you stand out uniquely in the marketplace? What is it that you bring to the table that is different from everyone else? What is your approach that helps your customers be a little bit more efficient and effective? Where are you filling in the gaps where your competition may be leaving those gaps behind? That's your competitive advantage. And in a pandemic, it is reevaluating that competitive advantage to identify key areas that can help serve and support your customer right now in urgency. Okay. The next area is establishing a diversified portfolio that creates sustainability. And I just talked about that. It is making certain that you're not too heavily concentrated in one area. You want to make certain that you are spreading the pie. You have multiple pieces of the pie available to you, and that you are serving and supporting different industries, different markets, and different customers. The next one is forecast for financial future and determines your capital needs. Cash flow generally doesn't become a concern until cash flow is a concern. And for a lot of businesses, working capital needs are not necessarily evaluated proactively. They are considered when there's an immediate need for it. So one of the things that we've been working with companies with most immediately and over the several years that we've been in business is make certain that you track and monitor those financials, that you track and monitor the trends in your cash flow, that you know exactly what seasons you need it, and then establish a really good partnership with a financial institution that is ready and available to help you grow, that they are flexible enough to help manage and be available to you when it's necessary. And then I think the third thing or the last thing regarding that one bullet point is to get the capital when you don't need it. Make certain that you are positioned to predict far in advance when you're going to need additional capital and obtain that before you need it, because when you need it, it's harder to get. And I think we experienced that in this pandemic. Your strategic plan should outline your management needs. Always evaluating the organizational chart. What do you need by way of infrastructure to make certain that you are able to move the needle on business? It should create an opportunity to revisit and reevaluate every 90 days. That's what I said earlier. You want to evaluate this on a quarterly basis. It keeps your long-term exit objectives in front of you. I can't continue to repeat that enough. It addresses your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and threats. You always want to know what are the gaps that exist in your business right now. Every 90 days, evaluate that so that you can start to put stopgap measures in place, strengthen those areas, and be positioned to be part of the 39% that are not impacted during this time. And then at the end of the day, your strategic plan should also marry itself with your money. Money and budgeting and forecasting are tools to be utilized to make certain that you stay on track, that you continue to move the needle on your business, and that you are in a position where you can continue to achieve the strategic objectives that you are looking to achieve in that long-term legacy goal. So I've made the one-page strategic plan available to you. So if you'd like to get a copy of it, all you need to do is text one word, pivot now, one word, to the number 66866. And you will get a text prompt, follow the prompt, and you will then receive the download that you can use to start to put your plans in place and keep them in front of you. So that's text pivot now, all one word, to 66866, and you will receive that download. So in closing, a lot of what we talked about today relate to a lot of the areas in which we help companies, businesses in and around government contracting to continue to strive, thrive, and survive throughout its business life cycle, not just during times of disruption. And so what we do is we help them with strategic planning and implementation. We help them with organizational assessment, that SWOT analysis that we talked about, and putting measures in place to help alleviate those challenges that companies may be facing. We help with accounting and finance operations, providing virtual CFO solutions to companies to help them do the budgeting, the forecasting, pricing evaluation, trend analysis, key performance indicator analysis, marrying your money with your mission. And then from a government contracting standpoint, we help with managing federal regulations, FAR regulations, DCA audit compliance, making certain that you have good pool structures in place, helping you to tie those pool structures back to performance of the business. And so we help with those things. And then the last thing is that we help with business mentorship and the development of business advisory, business board advisory. A couple of things that we have going on right now, if you're interested, I am right now in the middle of helping small businesses pivot and prosper. And so we're in the midst of a 5-day intensive where we're taking companies through 5 stages of helping them to establish their profitable pivot right now. So if you might be interested in helping us, in joining us, we're in day 4. Day 4 will be delivered this evening. If you're interested in that, just go to pulseprofitmethod.com. You can register and get started working with us. And then we also offer a community where we help small businesses on a regular basis, stay in contact with them, bring experts in to have a conversation. This is actually a free resource, and we administer this through our Facebook group called Scale to 7 Figures. And if you're interested in engaging with us and learning more about the things that the content that we deliver there, you can go to scale to7figures.com and join the conversation with us. And so I'd like to open it up for questions at this point, to see if there's any questions that I can answer to anyone that's out there right now.
So it looks like we have gotten a couple questions in already.
Awesome.
Our first question here says, regarding the process of finding gaps with strategic planning, how do we engage with the right organization or financing partner to ensure that gap is filled?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And so, as I mentioned before, financial institutions, having the right ones in place are critical to sustainable success. And so when we take a look at what's happening in this pandemic and what happened in the early phases of companies receiving economic stimulus, what we learned is some of the financial institutions were not supporting the small business activity. They were not supporting small businesses in the Paycheck Protection Program and helping them obtain that working capital. So one of the things that we talk to our clients a lot about is, number one, we believe that you should engage with 3 types of financial institutions. Number one is the large bank. And what we feel from a small business standpoint is that large banks are there and available to you for convenience. When you need to work with a financial institution that you can get to pretty quickly, you want to be able to have that accessibility, then a large bank is good for you. But when you're in a small business position, as an example, you want to make certain that you have a good relationship banker. And so that's why we say the second bank you want to have in place is a community bank. A community bank typically has more flexibility, they have more accessibility, and they have the capacity to be able to serve and move pretty quickly as it relates to serving their customers. And then the third bank type of institution is a credit union. And the credit unions are now just starting to gear up and do more business banking. And so they don't have the capacity to really provide us with the level of working capital that we need in order to continue to scale the business. However, those credit unions are there to help build employee morale because they provide benefits to the business. And so when we're looking at making certain that we're covered, right, it's all about coverage. It's all about making certain that, like you said, the gap is filled. You want to have those 3 types of banks in place, but most specifically, you want to engage with an institution that is available, that is accessible, and is all about building relationships with you.
All right, awesome. That definitely answers it. Another question we got in, you talked about inadequate pipelining earlier. I wanted to ask, what are some tactics or tips for creating better outreach and developing a better pipeline strategy?
Yeah. So I'm going to say, so the first thing is you want to make certain that your pipeline is really a pipeline. It's a true pipeline of real opportunities, and it's not just a pipe dream, right? Because when I take a look at some of the opportunities that companies have in a pipeline, it is just a pipe dream. It's just things that we're chasing after we haven't done any intelligence on the opportunity. We don't have any relationships in those spaces. And so it's just something that we're chasing after. It's a stab in the dark, right? But instead, we want to be able to, outreach is all centered around building solid relationships, building solid relationships. And so right now, my recommendation is first of all, use social media as a way to target very clear and key decision makers in the spaces where you are looking to really penetrate business opportunities. Reach out to them. They are accessible, most specifically right now. Have genuine conversations with them. Don't force feed them. Make certain that you show up for certain things that they are doing, so that you can be a resource to them, and that you become visible to them as well. And then go back to your core competencies, and instead of trying to figure out a way to just throw it all at them, take the time to learn what it is that they absolutely need, that is critical, that you can provide to them, and start having some meaningful conversations with them. So outreach means being proactive. It means knowing who you want to connect with and really starting to deepen those relationships. That's what we recommended our clients do at the very top of this pandemic. And as a result, very many of them have created new opportunities. I mean, the government's still open. They're still doing business. We have a couple of clients who just signed on contract opportunities that they didn't even know about. It wasn't in the pipeline, but the relationship was there. And they proactively reached out just to say, we're here. Is there anything that we can do to help? And stayed in communication. And as a result, they have some opportunities available to them. So I hope that was
All right.
good information.
Definitely. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
I think that's all the questions we have. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to share our polling results.
Awesome.
So our first question, how long have you been in business? We had 17% say 4 to 7 years, and then 83% said more than 15 years.
Okay.
Our second question, how has COVID-19 affected your business? 17% said no impact, we are business as usual. 17% said a positive impact, that business is booming. And 67% said some impact on our employees and contracts.
Okay.
Our third question, what do you believe is at the root of business failures? We had 33% say poor strategic planning, and then 67% said all of the above, which was also poor financial planning and poor capacity planning.
Awesome.
And then, do you have a strategic plan? 67% said yes, and 33% said kind of.
Okay. Awesome.
How often do you revisit your strategic plan? 17% said monthly, 33% said quarterly, and 50% said annually.
Okay.
And then lastly, has your strategic plan helped you manage through the pandemic? And that one was evenly split. 33% said yes, 33% said no, and 33% said kind of.
Okay. So we definitely want to make certain that we are all getting on board with having a good plan in place, that we are proactive in that process, that we are striving to be more like the 17% and the 33% who are looking at revisiting their plan on a monthly or quarterly basis, because that is actually what's going to help you. That's what's going to help you prepare for the next round that's going to happen. When you go back and take a look at the span of crises that I've experienced in business, About every 5 to 6 years, there's some type of disruption that happens in the marketplace. And so we want to make certain that we are in a position to withstand that. And that starts here.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us this morning and all that valuable information you gave us. And thank you all for joining us. If you'd like to review anything from the webinar today, it will be available on the GovCon 365 YouTube page in a couple of weeks. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.